We meet today amid swirling reports of a growing government scandal. Most of the major media has ignored news that our federal government sanctioned the running of illegal guns into Mexico. Leaks from within ATF and evidence from congressional committees are building. They should be investigated by every news organization in this country. We deserve to know the truth. Please watch.
They blamed honest, law-abiding gun dealers for a river of guns.
This war is being waged with guns purchased not here, but in the United States, many from gun shops that line our shared border.
They blamed us for a myth they created, but was exposed by the NRA.
Nearly 90%.
90%? 90%.
More than 90% of the guns recovered in Mexico come from the United States.
And they blamed our Second Amendment, attacking our firearm freedoms to advance their own agenda.
There is one issue where Mexico needs your cooperation, and that is consider restating the assault weapons ban.
Turns out, this numbers game has ATF's name written all over it. They were the ones who opened a floodgate of guns. Using a strategy called letting guns walk, thousands of guns ended up in the hands of the drug cartels. It was called Operation Fast and Furious.
It looks like the agency was doing this on purpose. The government actually encouraged gun dealers to sell multiple firearms to known and suspected traffickers.
ATF's strategy was to let the guns walk, track them across the border, and then take down a major cartel, but keep it all a secret from the Mexican government. It was a strategy doomed to fail from the start.
The ATF screwed up. It's up to the ATF to follow up, to see who's really the money behind it. And as far as I can tell, that's the ball that got dropped.
Attorney Dick DeGuerin represents Carter's country in Houston that was falsely labeled by the Washington Post as one of the biggest sources of firepower for the cartels.
Bill Carter was angry and felt very used by the ATF because they thought they were doing exactly what ATF wanted them to do. They would do what's called the stall and call. They'd stall the purchaser, call the ATF, and say there's a suspicious sale going on here. And often, Carter's country would have acted on that suspicion and not gone through with the sales, except that they were encouraged to go through with the sales by the ATF agents. In fact, on some occasions, ATF asked the store people to follow the purchasers out to the parking lot and get a license number if you can.
But Carter's country also shared the same concerns, echoed in damaging emails sent from a gun shop owner in Phoenix to the ATF last year and recently obtained by Senator Grassley. The unnamed owner wrote that he wanted to help ATF with its investigation, but not if it risks the safety of all the agents who protect our country.
You don't let guns walk. I've never let a gun walk.
A lot of people are going to get hurt with those firearms between the time we let them go and the time they're recovered again in a crime.
ATF agents who confronted their bosses over and over again about the gun-walking strategy could no longer remain silent and spoke with CBS News.
We just knew it wasn't going to end well. There's no way it could.
Then on December 10th, 2010, their worst nightmare came true. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was gunned down.
I felt guilty. I mean, it's crushing.
2 assault rifles ATF let walk were found at the crime scene. And all these agents want is for the family of Agent Brian Terry to know the truth.
I've done everything that I can for them to get the truth. After this, I don't know what else I can do, but I hope they get it.
But the truth has been hard to get. Although these documents confirm what Agent Dotson and other insiders are saying, that the gun-walking strategy was approved all the way to the Justice Department, that's not what the administration says.
We cannot have a situation where guns are allowed to walk, and I've made that clear to the United States attorneys as well as the agents in charge.
I did not authorize it. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, did not authorize it.
Originally, they tried to blame the gun dealers. Then when it became obvious that this was allowed, each time we've tried to go up the chain to find out what were they thinking and why would they think this was okay, we get stopped from going to the next level.
In fact, Chairman Issa is now threatening to begin contempt proceedings because ATF has refused to turn over any documents to his committee.
At this point, we believe it goes to the highest level of this administration's political appointees and allowed this cover-up to go on and continue till this day.
I think it's a case of stonewalling.
Senator Grassley has also made clear any claim by the Justice Department that ATF never knowingly approved or allowed the sale of assault weapons to straw purchasers is simply not credible because of new evidence he's obtained.
They wanted to prove that there were guns flowing to Mexico, so they set up an illegal pipeline. When does it stop being law enforcement and start being a criminal enterprise? Innocent people are dying.
I'm not surprised, given that it's the ATF. It has always been a rogue agency. Look what they did in Waco.
I think this instance is probably one of the darkest days in ATF's history.
We love this country. We respect its leaders. Respect requires truth, and the straightforward, simple truth is this. When it comes to the Obama administration, we have had it. We've had it with Eric Holder. We've had it with Hillary Clinton and the rest of this administration. And Lord knows, Americans have sure had it with the arrogant, sanctimonious, gun-hating liars who call themselves the national news media in this country. We respect and we admire the law enforcement officers, the dedicated field officers who work every single day in this country under difficult conditions. But there's a big difference between the good field agents and their bureaucratic, politicking bosses back at ATF headquarters in Washington, D.C. When it comes to those scheming bureaucrats in Washington, gun owners have had it. Our rights have been attacked before, and the political elites and the media have often conspired to shame and blame American gun owners for violent crime. Together, we have all fought with pride and defeated those threats. But we've never witnessed anything like the rotten level of corruption, conspiracy, and cover-up confronting us today, all because they hate Americans and our rights more than they care about the lives of innocent people. I'll say that again. Our government has been willing to let people die to advance their assault on the Second Amendment. Our southern border proves it. When ATF officials order lawful gun dealers to make illegal sales, that's corrupt. When ATF authorizes and watches thousands of guns walk across the border and fall into the hands of Mexican drug cartels, that's not just bizarre law enforcement, it's government-sanctioned gun running. When the administration stonewalls congressional investigations, that's a conspiracy to cover up the truth. And when almost every reporter in America ignores the story, it doesn't just prove the media is biased, it proves they're cowards. When Janet Napolitano declares the Mexican border is safe, that's dishonest. When Obama and Holder and Clinton blame American gun owners for Mexican drug crime, even as our own government is running guns south, that is politics at its most cynical and most despicable. Operation Fast and Furious may have gotten one or perhaps two federal agents killed, and countless other innocent victims have been murdered with the illegal guns that our own government allowed into Mexico, all to advance a political agenda. Over and over and over, Americans heard the President, the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, and members of Congress claim that Mexico's violent crime was the result of American firearms flowing south of the border. They blamed our rights, even as they allowed illegal straw buyers to walk free right across the border. They engaged in a massive gun-running operation sponsored by our own American tax dollars. And these schemers have the gall to say it's our fault, that the Second Amendment is to blame. The Second Amendment is to blame? Eric Holder, you saw it, said he didn't know about the operation. He's the Attorney General of the United States of America, the highest law enforcement officer in our land. He's in charge, and he didn't know? Then who's minding the store over at the Justice Department? If Holder didn't know, Holder's got to go. I call on President Obama to order ATF and the Justice Department officials to testify before the United States Congress and fully disclose every detail of their rogue operation. Mr. President, it's time to come clean. Stop the stonewalling and stop the lies. Because the lying is getting people killed every single day. The Justice Department called Mexico's drug cartels the biggest organized crime threat to the United States of America. Over 1 million gang members now active in every state in the United States. Cartels are bringing drugs, murder, torture, and mayhem right into our neighborhoods. The administration doesn't care. While calling for more gun laws, they've done nothing to crack down on the border and everything to make it worse. Janet Napolitano, the Secretary of Homeland Security, recently told Americans the border was safe. Well, Janet, you must have been thinking about our friends in Canada. Because if you're talking about the Mexican border, what you said is either clueless or it's dishonest. I went to our southern border. In fact, I've been to the border more than the president. Despite what Janet says, the border is anything but safe. It's white hot and it's chilling. Take a look.
The smugglers down here own the night, really. They have the high points. They can see us coming from miles.
Almost like you're in Afghanistan, doing missions.
Yeah, they're watching your every move. They're basing their movements on what we're doing.
And they're likely to have people in this high ground, you were saying?
Yeah, absolutely. They'll post people up there to let the bosses know when law enforcement's in the area, if it's clear for the drugs to come through. And these guys will pull guns on you in a heartbeat. They have military precision, and we have to counter that with military precision. They're using military tactics on American soil, and it's just unreal.
Every citizen of our country needs to know what you're dealing with down here. They really do. Because it's going to impact them and their lives and their kids' lives down the road.
This problem here affects the entire country because these cartels are recruiting our youth. The Zetas in particular, which is a very well-known, very violent group, we know that they send sleeper cells into the U.S. and the violence associated with the cartels is carrying over, and they're making our U.S. gangs even more violent, and they're arming them better and teaching them tactics to use, and so it's a bad combination.
It's crazy. It's impacting every city in the United States.
Absolutely. These cartels realize that they can rely now on the U.S. gangs to further their criminal enterprise, and they're doing that.
I'm here 60 miles inland from the border. Janet Napolitano says this whole area is safe. Don't believe it. There are criminals and drug gangs coming over this border every day. In this one sector, over 40,000 already have a criminal record in the United States, and Washington, D.C. has its head in the sand. The ranchers that live down here, they're out alone every single night. And I'll tell you this, they know with absolute certainty that the only thing they have is the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States to protect them.
It's not safe down here. I don't care how many times they say it is.
Yeah.
It's not, and if it were, she'd be willing to come down and spend a night here by herself. And I guarantee you none of them will.
You're all saying the same thing, and yet there's a total disconnect with the politicians in D.C. It's just unbelievable.
The argument by the politicians towards us is always that you're not a border county, that the borders are more secure than ever, and that's a bunch of bullshit. Essentially, you're looking at what protects the U.S. from Mexico is just desert to desert.
It's not Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. It's the day-to-day life of every American.
Absolutely.
And if we don't get a handle on it, it's going to be a lot lesser life for citizens in our country, isn't it?
Yes, sir. We're Americans just like everybody else. Always at the front of my brain is, what am I handing off to my kids as a country? What am I giving them? And what mess do they have to clean up after we leave?
Ladies and gentlemen, with us today is one of the good guys trying to do something about the border. He's been threatened by the cartels and undermined by government bureaucrats. Yet, day in and day out, he continues to put his life at risk to keep our country safe. Please join me in thanking a real American hero from Pinal County, Arizona Sheriff Paul Babu. Paul, Sheriff. Sheriff, we're honored you're here with us today. We look forward to hearing you tonight at the celebration of American values. At our southern border, government has failed and endangered us, just as government has failed and endangered us from violent crime everywhere. They don't care. They care about sensational events that capture national attention and drive their agenda, like Columbine, Virginia Tech, Fort Hood, and Tucson. The media wastes no time in turning deranged monsters into celebrities, even though that's the last thing the media should do. It creates a madman hero for every potential crazy copycat out there. It's sick, it's wrong, and the media in this country ought to be ashamed of themselves for doing it. What the media won't admit is that in each of those tragedies, the mass killers, they all had the same decisive advantage: government gun-free zones and anti-self-defense laws that protected the safety of no one except the killers and condemned the victims to death without so much as a prayer. That's right. Our own policies gave more protection to the killers than to the innocent. Government gun-free zones have become the hunting ground of evil, deranged monsters. But NBC and the New York Times, they're not going to admit the truth. The media and the political elites want us to believe that if we just pass another law or two, we'll all be safer. But it's a lie. If we could legislate evil out of people's hearts, we would have done it long ago. And when they use tragedy to push for banning this firearm or that magazine or shut down lawful gun shows, it's a fraud. Their laws don't work, their lies don't ring true, and the only thing we know for certain is government has failed. Government has failed us with our money and our financial institutions. It's failed in running our post offices and our trains. It's failed in enforcing our immigration laws, our drug laws, and our laws against violent criminals with guns. They can't even pass a budget, let alone keep an air traffic controller awake at night. When it comes to protecting us from the mayhem of a violent madman, government is an abject failure. Worse, by its lies and laws and lack of enforcement, government policies are getting us killed and making us prisoners in a society of violence. By the time I finish this speech, 2 Americans will be slain. 6 women will be forcibly raped. 27 of us will be robbed, and 50 more are going to be beaten. More than 25,000 violent crimes are committed every week in this country. These are FBI statistics. During a typical week, 300 Americans are murdered. 200 of us are killed by more than 27,000 drunk drivers. 7,800 of us are robbed. 15,000 of our neighbors are violently assaulted. And 1,700 American women and girls are raped. That's just 1 week. That's the harsh reality. That's the very real danger that we all get up and face every single day. But the media, they don't care. Everyday victims aren't celebrities. They don't draw ratings. They don't draw sponsors. The political elites, they don't care. Everyday victims don't help drive their political agenda. Everyday victims murdered, beaten, robbed, and raped every single day are all too often commonly ignored and way too quickly forgotten. The politicians and the media systematically deny and shroud the reality of just how dangerous daily life can be in this country. Like Colette, girl from a small Midwestern town, the victim of a brutal predator who was recently freed on parole. Colette was home in her apartment. She was ready to go out. She heard a knock on the door. She thought it was a friend. It wasn't. It was the beginning of 4 hours of hell. Please watch.
It's beyond terror. Just a knock on the door changed everything. He held me there for probably at least 4 hours the whole time, repeatedly raping me, torturing me, shooting me up with coke and meth. I kept begging him, and an hour or 2 into it, I asked him, just please kill me. But he said that I wasn't looking to do that. I wanted a piece of ass, and you just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. In fact, just a few months ago, I spoke to the original arresting officer, and he told me that he knew of 9 prior women that this person had done this to, and not one of them had the guts to pursue it in court. I sent letters to the parole board, literally begging them, please don't let this person out. I mean, look at his history. This isn't the kind of person, this isn't the kind of crime that he's just going to stop. You know, these type of people don't have that ability.
The last time he came up for parole, they decided to let him out.
Yes.
Did they tell you why?
They decided to let him out because part of her response was, well, you know, when guys, they're this age and they've been in prison for a long time, they just kind of tend to want to get out and just go about their lives and live the rest of their lives out quietly.
Quietly? God. Peace of mind? What about your peace of mind?
There is none. It's still with me every day. Probably why I don't like Christmas time, because the trial started like a week after Christmas, and that's to this day. I hate it. I'm very afraid of death after this experience because I thought I was gonna die, and it's so horrifyingly terrible. My biggest fear, oh, hands down, him hurting the next person. He's out there right now as we speak, and that's just, it's wrong on every level. They don't deserve to have the right to walk amongst you and I. The system definitely failed. I feel the system did fail.
Government failed that woman, just like it failed Joe. On a cold morning this past February, Joe was on a New York subway. He was headed for work when he was attacked by a deranged monster that had already killed 4 other innocent victims. Joe, just an everyday guy, a dad, commuting to his job, who for no sane reason at all became the unsuspecting target of a slasher. Please watch.
I get on the train. The first thing I wonder is this the car that happened in? And I relive it every day I get on that train. Maxim Gelman, he had no mercy. Not even sure he had a soul. He looks at me right in the eye, and he takes out this big knife, holds it up, and he says, "You're gonna die, you're gonna die." And then he lunged at me. The blood's just coming out like a heartbeat, like bump, 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 and that's when the panic set in. In this wound, you could see my skull. On this wound, he cut me so deep you could see my tricep. When he brought his arm back to get me again, that's when I made my move. I actually grabbed his hand, and then I held it there, and he dropped the knife. I definitely had an angel with me that day, for sure. Police officer comes up to me with a mugshot, and he says, "Is this the guy that did this to you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you're a hero," because he killed 4 people last night. I'm getting chills right now, just reliving that, just thinking about that, because I think his plan was for me to be another victim, and my plan was to get off the train and see my family again. I thought I was lucky every time I hugged them since the day they're born. Now especially, I realize how lucky I am. My life will never be the same. I don't handle myself well in crowds to begin with, and now I can't even walk through a corridor. People are bumping into me and stuff, and yeah, it's like every time they hit you, it's like bam, bam, bam. It's just simple things like not putting things off, because tomorrow is not guaranteed to anybody. I'm fortunate you're able to speak to me. He killed 4 people, and their voices will never be heard. If I could be the voice of those people, I would love to just be face to face with them.
Police say Gelman has had several run-ins with the law for drugs and graffiti.
If the criminal justice system fails with this, then I think I just lose faith in humanity. I mean, there's no doubt. This guy did this. Light him up. That's how I feel.
Government could not protect Joe, just an ordinary guy getting up in our country and going to work. Government failed him and Colette, 2 Americans just like any of us in this room this morning. A woman at home, a guy going to work. Their violent reality is a reality that every American faces every single day. A reality this Dallas woman never imagined until 2 weeks ago. Please watch.
When you see this video, you'll know exactly why they decided to release this. This happened back on March 29th, and police are saying there's got to be somebody who must have seen this. That's a woman being beaten. Robbery detectives are saying that the public's assistance is desperately needed. 2 suspects caught on the surveillance video attacking this woman before dragging her across the parking lot and stealing her purse. This is over a purse. And her, I saw some pictures of her a short time ago. Very, very injured woman.
That woman is every one of us. She represents any of the daughters and wives in this room and throughout this country. It is sickening the way these predators in this country target women. Cowards lurking out there in the shadows in search of their next prey. There's only one real solution to such cowardice, a solution that would save lives and it would drastically cut violent crime. Arm women. Confront the cowardly predators. Arm America's women. Every American wife and mother and daughter, every law-abiding adult woman should be trained, armed, and encouraged to carry a firearm for personal protection. Every elected official who cares about violent crime should hold a press conference tomorrow morning and announce full-throated support for the arming of American women. Any politician in opposition who whines about another idiotic gun law proves to be just another elitist snob who doesn't give a damn about innocent victims and doesn't care about reducing violent crime in this country. Arm America's women. Save them from the animals that roam our land, picking them off one by one. Empower the daughters and mothers and wives we all cherish to fight for their lives. Political exploitation of tragedy is nothing but corruption, and their call for more gun control is a siren song of hypocrites. Because the politicians don't really hate guns. They just hate ours, our guns, and our rights. For them, gun control means they control us. The elites care about their money, their banks, so they surround them with armed guards. American airports, office buildings, power plants, courthouses, even sports stadiums are all protected by armed security. Even Mayor Bloomberg benefits from armed security. Members of Congress, guarded by the Capitol Police, armed. And the President is protected by the armed Secret Service. Celebrities and the wealthy, including members of the news media, are protected by armed guards. Do we care less about our homes, our kids, and our schools? Are they really less worthy of the full measure of armed protection? Americans have had enough of government failure, and Americans have had enough of government hypocrisy. It's time for a change, and I mean a real change. Government can't protect us, but it can and it has endangered us by restricting our freedom to protect ourselves. It's time right here this morning to acknowledge what we all know in our hearts to be true, that the best way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And the presence of a firearm in the hands of a good person makes us all safer. It's just that simple, and it's just that true. So no more lies and laws and corruption and government failure. No more. At the scene of the crime, there's only the criminal and the victim. The police, though well-intentioned, and they all know this, despite all their best intentions, they always come later. And the victim is all too often forgotten. It's time the victims in this country got a fighting chance. Every American deserves that. It is our right, it is our time to demand that members of Congress honor that right and immediately enact national right to carry reciprocity all over this land. We're going to do it with your help, believe me. The Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution has never been more relevant than it is today. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Founding Fathers, they sure had it right from the beginning. Our security is in our own hands, ensured by the bearing of arms in the hands of good people all across this country. The safety of our homes and our neighborhoods and of our kids' schools and of the people that we all love most is in our own hands. Government has failed. As citizens, we have been abandoned, left alone to face personal danger that's out there every single day. Well, we may be alone, but we breathe the same free air of our Founding Fathers, empowered by the Second Amendment to live secure and to live free. Our liberty in this country lives in the Second Amendment to the Constitution, the fundamental right that separates us from all other nations on earth. That freedom makes America better than other countries. That freedom makes us stronger. The duty of our forefathers now rests with us to defend and preserve our freedom. And we must, each of us, must answer that call with all of our might. Will we fight to preserve our liberty? They can't hear you yet at the White House. Let me ask you again. Will we fight to keep our nation strong and safe and free? Will we fight and prevail against the enemies of freedom? Let me hear you. Our promise to America is that there will always be a Second Amendment, and that the Second Amendment will always be the people's first freedom. We will fight to defend that freedom. We will fight for the rights of all Americans to live free. We will fight and we will prevail. We will prevail because we must. We will prevail because, by God, we are the NRA. Thank you very much, and let's fight for freedom every single day. Thank you. Thank you.